Blackout poetry is one of my favorite ways to connect visual art and writing. With Blackout poetry, you take a book page or anything with text on it and you create your own poem using the words on the page. Then you add imagery to create a work of art that highlights the poem that you've selected with the words on the page. If you love art, don't forget to subscribe. I have you covered with tons of fun tutorials from drawing to painting and everything in between. For Blackout poetry, start by finding a surface to create your poem on. Traditionally, you would use an old book, maybe something that's worn out or you have more than one copy of, but if you're stuck at home during a pandemic, you could use advertisements that are mailed to you. You can use magazine pages, newspaper pages, so you don't have to cut up your favorite book, anything that has text on it, even an old cereal box. I'm using a book page from a book that I actually have more than one copy of. Start by reading your page entirely and circling words that stand out to you. So you might want to read more than one page before you commit to ripping it out of your book. Now, my sister is a librarian, so I know it seems really strange to rip up a book, but we have so many books that are in print. So think of this as creating something new and breathing new life into a material that might not be used anymore. Think of the book page as a word bank and try to find an anchor word, something that jumps out at you right away. For me, it was the word mountain. Then you piece together all the other words to create a cohesive poem. And remember, this is someone else's writing, so you wouldn't outline a whole paragraph unless you're trying to highlight the artist or author of the book. So if it's already a book of poems and you just want to decorate someone else's poem, you would definitely want to make sure that the person who wrote the page is credited. I think it's very helpful to start in pencil, and then once you're committed to the flow of your poem, you can outline and start using a Sharpie or a pen or a marker, colored pencils, to make your poem make sense. So it's definitely a challenge using someone else's word and in the order that they used it to make a poem that makes sense. Your poem can be really simple or really complex. It can make sense and be beautiful, or it can be totally random. Mine is really simple, and I'm focusing on the feeling of being in the mountains and the wind flowing through the air, which are the words that this author gave me. So my idea, of course, is to do a simple mountain landscape. You can draw anything you'd like with any materials. If you feel like you're more of a writer than an artist, don't feel like you have to draw this intricate drawing. You can just black out the areas that you don't want to show up and just do very simple patterns. I'm more comfortable drawing than I am writing, so I made a very simple 1-2-line poem, and then I want to illustrate it in some way. So my poem has a mention of the afternoon air winding through the mountains. And so I want to draw lines that give that feeling of the mountain air moving. When decorating your page, remember that your words are the most important part of this Blackout poetry artwork. So you want to black out everything that's going to distract from the words that you've selected. So it's not just a page from the book, and it is going to highlight and cover up the words that you don't want to be shown. So I'm going to fill a pattern in my whole background, and I'm going to make sure that the words I want you to read are really dark or stand out in some way. A thick Sharpie is a really great tool for covering up a lot of the words that you don't want to be a part of your poem. Most of my words are at the top of the page, so I knew I needed to do something different and dark at the bottom to cover up the words that don't relate to my poem. You could use paint, you could use marker, any materials that you have at home. And if you do a quick Google search of Blackout poetry, you'll have pages and pages of inspiration of how this has been done before. But try to be original and creative with how you create the words and the drawings on your page. When writing, the beginning of your poem is just as important as the end. And so I ended on a very simple 2-word sentence, I smile. So the whole point was that this experience of being in the mountains and feeling the mountain wind was something that was a positive experience. And so I ended it down at the bottom. So I don't want to cover those words up, and I'm going to outline my mountains around them, but making sure that they look like an anchor or an ending to the poem I started up top. If you use pencil, which I do recommend to start your poem, make sure you erase your lines and bold your poem the best you can so that it really stands out. I feel like my ending is a little disconnected from the top, and so I use my red pen just to give a slight emphasis to the bottom and ending of my poem. You can use color throughout the whole thing, but you want to make sure that the flow of your poem is there. Cold afternoon air, winding through the terrain, imposing mountains, old fortresses. I smile.